Admiral Kreshva stood on the bridge of the massive dreadnought, eternal victory, and felt the weight of history on her shoulders. Round her flagship, 199 other warships moved in perfect formation through the dark void of space. This was the largest military force the Zephyrian Confederation had assembled in 5 centuries. "Admiral, we have visual contact with the human vessel," reported her sensor officer. On the main display, the tiny UES horizon appeared as a small dot against the backdrop of stars. It looked impossibly fragile compared to the enormous fleet surrounding it. The dreadnought alone was 50 times larger than the human ship. "Open communications," Admiral Kreshva ordered, her voice echoing through the bridge. The face of Captain Jake Morrison appeared on the screen. He looked relaxed, almost amused by the situation. Behind him, his crew could be seen working calmly at their stations. "Admiral Kreshva," Captain Morrison said with a friendly nod. "Good to see you again. It's quite an impressive fleet you've brought. Are you having some kind of military exercise out here?" The casual tone in his voice made Admiral Kreshva's teeth clench. This human was looking at 200 warships and treating it like a parade. "Captain Morrison," she said formally, "you are completely surrounded. Your vessel is outnumbered 200 to 1. I am offering you one final chance to surrender peacefully." Captain Morrison scratched his chin thoughtfully. "Admiral, I appreciate the offer. But like I said before, we really can't do that. We have a job to finish here. Our survey of this region is almost complete, and then we'll be heading home." Sir Engineer Amy Rodriguez called out from her station. "I'm showing some interesting gravitational anomalies from that gas giant over there. Mind if I run a quick scan while we're talking?" "Go ahead, Amy," Captain Morrison replied without taking his eyes off the Admiral. Admiral Kreshva watched in disbelief as the human ship began conducting scientific scans while surrounded by the most powerful military force in their civilization's history. "You have 30 seconds to comply with my demands," the Admiral said through gritted teeth. "Admiral," Captain Morrison said with a patient sigh, "we really don't want any trouble here. We've got a schedule to keep, and our mission parameters are pretty clear about avoiding unnecessary delays. Can't we work something out?" "Fire," Admiral Kreshva commanded. 200 warships opened fire at once. The space around the UES horizon filled with deadly energy beams, plasma bolts, and missile trails. It was enough firepower to destroy a small moon, but the human ship was no longer there. "Where is it?" Admiral Kreshva shouted. "I don't know, Admiral," her sensor officer replied, panic clear in his voice. "It just vanished." Above us called out another officer. 2,000 meters directly above the fleet, the UES horizon had somehow appeared in the middle of their formation without anyone seeing it move. Captain Morrison's voice came over the communications channel, sounding slightly annoyed. "Well, that wasn't very friendly. Amy, looks like we're going to need those system modifications after all." "It's already on it, Captain," came the engineer's voice. "Running full defensive protocols now." Strange beams of light began shooting out from the human ship in all directions. But these were not weapons in any sense the Zephyrians understood. Instead of destroying their vessels, the beams seemed to reach inside them and turn things off. First, ships to be hit found their main weapons simply stopping. Not damaged, not destroyed, just switched off, as if someone had found an impossible off button. Other vessels lost their engines, leaving them drifting helplessly through space. Some ships had their defensive shields fail, while others found their communication systems going silent. "What are they doing to us?" Admiral Kreshva demanded. Her chief engineer stared at his readings in complete confusion. "Admiral, they are somehow accessing our computer systems from the outside. They are shutting down individual components without damaging them. This should not be possible." Captain Morrison's voice filled the bridge again. "Sorry about this, folks. We really tried to avoid any unpleasantness. Amy, make sure you leave their life support systems alone. There's no point in anyone getting hurt over a misunderstanding." "Of course, Captain," Amy Rodriguez replied cheerfully. "I'm just disabling their weapons and engines. Everyone will be perfectly safe." Admiral Kreshva watched in horror as her mighty fleet was systematically disabled by a single small ship. The humans were not even trying to hurt them. They were being as gentle as possible while making it impossible for the Zephyrians to fight. "How are they moving like that?" she whispered. The UES horizon danced between the massive warships like a leaf in the wind. It was impossible to track, impossible to predict, and apparently impossible to hit. The ship moved in ways that should have turned its crew into paste, but the humans seemed completely unaffected. Captain Navigator Lisa Carter called out, "I'm picking up some really interesting stellar formations about 3 light years from here. We should definitely check those out before we head home." "Good thinking, Lisa," Captain Morrison replied, while his ship disabled 3 more cruisers. "Ben, any word from the survey team in the next sector?" Communications Officer Ben Tucker checked his console. "They're running about 2 days behind schedule, Captain. It's found some unusual quantum phenomena that they want to study in more detail." The casual conversation continued as if the humans were not in the middle of a battle with 200 enemy ships. They discussed their scientific findings, compared notes on interesting discoveries, and made plans for the next phase of their mission. Admiral Kreshva realized with growing terror that this was not a desperate fight for survival from the human perspective. This was a minor inconvenience that they were handling with the same efficient professionalism they had shown when helping that damaged mining station. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported, "we have lost weapons capability on 60%. Of our fleet engine failures on 40%. The human vessel is still operating at full capacity." "Impossible," Admiral Kreshva muttered. "Actually, Admiral," Captain Morrison said, apparently having heard her comment, "our ship is designed for exactly this kind of situation. First contact scenarios can get complicated, so our people made sure we could handle ourselves if things got unfriendly." Amy Rodriguez's voice came over the channel again. "Captain, I'm reading some stress fractures in the hull of that big ship there. Should I reinforce their structural integrity while I'm working on their systems?" "Good catch, Amy. We don't want anyone getting hurt because of metal fatigue." Admiral Kreshva felt her world collapsing around her. The humans were not just defeating her fleet, they were worried about the safety of her crew. They were treating the most powerful military force in Confederation history like children who might accidentally hurt themselves. "Sir," her communications officer said quietly, "we are receiving surrender requests from 17 of our ships.
Oh.
Their captains want to know if they should abandon their vessels." Admiral Kreshva looked around her bridge. Half of her own ships' systems had been shut down. They could not fight, they could not run, and they could not even communicate with most of their fleet. "Open a channel to the human ship," she said, her voice barely audible. "Channel open, Admiral?" "Captain Morrison," she said, trying to keep the defeat out of her voice. "What do you want from us?" Captain Morrison looked genuinely surprised by the question. "Want from you, Admiral? We don't want anything from you. We just want to finish our survey mission and go home. We've got families waiting for us, and we're already running a bit behind schedule." "And why are you doing this?" "Well," Captain Morrison said patiently, "you keep trying to shoot at us. We can't let that interfere with our work. Look, how about this? We'll restore your systems in about an hour, and you can go back to whatever you were doing before. We'll be out of your space in another day or 2 anyway." Admiral Kreshva stared at the human captain in complete bewilderment. He was offering to fix her ships and leave peacefully, as if the last hour had been nothing more than a friendly disagreement. "You would do that?" she asked, "Of course. We're not here to cause trouble for anyone. We're just doing our job." Communication ended, and Admiral Kreshva slumped into her command chair. Around her, the bridge crew sat in stunned silence. "Send a priority message to High Command," she whispered.
Tell them
"That if these are just scouts, we need to know what their real military looks like." High Chancellor Morden had not slept in 3 days. The reports from Admiral Kreshva kept getting worse, and now his entire government was in panic. He stood in his private office, staring out at the capital city below, watching millions of Zephyrians go about their daily lives without knowing that their entire civilization might be in danger. "Sir," his assistant said quietly from the doorway, "Intelligence Director Morkin is here with the latest findings." Morden turned around slowly. "Send him in." Intelligence Director Morkin entered, carrying a thick data pad and looking like he had aged 10 years in the past week. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by something that looked very much like fear. "What have you found?" Morden asked. Morkin sat down heavily and activated his data pad. "Sir, we have been monitoring all human communications since the battle. Our best cryptographers have been working day and night to break their codes, and we succeeded this morning. Morcaness's voice was barely a whisper. Chancellor, what? We discovered changes everything we thought we knew about the galaxy. The holographic display in the office came to life, showing star charts and data streams. Morden studied the information, his expression growing more horrified with each passing moment. This cannot be accurate, he said. I checked at 17. Time, sir. Our computers confirm the translation is correct. According to the intercepted communications, Earth was not just another world. It was the capital of something called the Terran Federation, a massive alliance that spanned over 3,000 star systems. The humans had been exploring space for more than 4 centuries, and they controlled territory that dwarfed the Zephyrian Confederation.
3,000 systems, Morden repeated numbly.
That is not the worst part, sir,
Morgan continued.
The UES Horizon is not a military vessel. It belongs to something called the Terran Survey Corps, which appears to be a civilian scientific organization. Morden felt his knees go weak. Civilian? Yes, sir. Or Captain Morrison and his crew are the equivalent of university students on a field trip. The advanced technology that defeated Battlefleet Omega is standard equipment for their researchers. The implications hit Morden like a physical blow. If human graduate students could disable their most powerful fleet, what could their actual military do? There is more, sir, Morgan said grimly. We intercepted Captain Morrison's mission report. According to their classification system, our entire Confederation rates as what they call a Category 2 civilization. What does that mean? Suitable for limited trade agreements and cultural exchange programs? Morgan read from his notes. Report describes us as a moderately advanced regional power with standard plasma-based technology and conventional kinetic defense systems. Morden stared at the data in shock. The Zephyrian Confederation, which had dominated this region of space for 3 millennia, was considered a minor regional power by human standards. The report recommends assigning a junior diplomatic team to handle first contact protocols. Morkan continued. Captain Morrison suggests we be placed on their monitored species list and proposes a follow-up diplomatic mission in approximately 50 years. Once we have had time to mature politically, the words hung in the air like a death sentence. The humans saw them as children who might be ready for adult conversation in half a century. Sir Morkan said softly, there is one more thing. The humans have fought wars against something called mechanical intelligences, energy beings, and hive minds. Conflicts that lasted for decades and involved the destruction of entire star systems. Morden sat down slowly, his mind struggling to process the magnitude of what he was hearing. The Zephyrians had always thought of themselves as apex predators in the galaxy. Now they discovered they were not even significant enough to be considered a threat. Meanwhile, aboard the EU's Horizon, Captain Morrison was finishing his final reports. The ship had completed its survey of the local region and was preparing to return to Earth. The encounter with the Zephyrian fleet was noted in his files as a minor incident requiring limited defensive action. Amy, how are those geological samples from the vegan mining worlds looking? He asked. Engineer Amy Rodriguez looked up from her analysis station. Really interesting, Captain. The mineral composition suggests this entire region was formed by some kind of massive stellar event about 2 million years ago. The University Geology Department is going to love this data. Excellent. Ben, any final communications from local governments? Communications Officer Ben Tucker checked his console. The Altarians sent another thank you message for the medical supplies. The vegan colonists are asking if we might come back sometime to help with their mining efficiency problems. Oh, and that Zephyrian Admiral sent a very polite message wishing us safe travels. Captain Morrison nodded. Always nice when first contact goes smoothly. Lisa set course for Earth. Time to go home. Navigator Lisa Carter input the coordinates for their home system. Course laid in, Captain. Should arrive in about 6 days. As the UES Horizon prepared to jump to hyperspace, Captain Morrison made his final log entry about the region. Survey Mission 847C completed successfully. Local civilizations appear generally peaceful with moderate technological development. The Zephyrian Confederation shows some concerning aggressive tendencies that might make full Federation membership problematic at this time. Recommend monitoring and reassessment in 50 to 75 years. Overall assessment. Suitable for limited cultural exchange and trade agreements. He paused the recording and looked around at his crew. Good work. Everyone, another successful mission for the Survey Corps? The ship vanished into hyperspace, leaving the Zephyrian fleet to repair their damaged systems and contemplate their new place in the universe. Back on the Zephyrian capital world, High Chancellor Morden was making the most important decision in his species' history. He called an emergency session of the full Confederation Council and shared everything they had learned about humanity. The reaction was immediate and unanimous. The age of Zephyrian expansion was over. We must send diplomatic envoys to Earth immediately, declared Councillor Vixera. Not as conquerors, but as the minor power we apparently are. All military expansion programs are hereby cancelled, announced Admiral Zethka. Our entire defense budget will be redirected to diplomatic corps and peaceful research. We need better ambassadors, agreed the Altarian delegate. And we need to learn how to be good neighbors in a galaxy that is much larger and more dangerous than we ever imagined. Morden nodded slowly. Send word to all Confederation worlds. The old ways are finished. We are no longer the dominant power in this region. We never were. As the emergency session continued, teams of Zephyrian diplomats began preparing for the most humbling mission in their civilization's history. They would travel to Earth not as proud conquerors, as representatives of a small regional government hoping to establish friendly relations with a galactic superpower. The irony was not lost on any of them. They had spent 3,000 years building an empire, only to discover that they lived in someone else's backyard, far away in space. The UES Horizon continued its peaceful journey home. Captain Morrison and his crew had no idea that their simple scientific mission had just reshaped the political landscape of an entire galactic region. To them, it had been just another routine survey, with the usual minor complications that came with meeting new species. In his personal log, Captain Morrison wrote a brief note about the encounter with the Zephyrians. Met some locals who seemed a bit territorial at first, but they calmed down once they realized we were not a threat. Fairly typical reaction for a species that has not had much contact with advanced civilizations. With time and proper diplomatic guidance, they should develop into useful trading partners. He had no way of knowing that his casual assessment had become the foundation for a new era of galactic politics, or that his name would be remembered in Zephyrian history books for the next 1,000 years as the human who taught them humility. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, and humanity was just beginning to explore it all. The emergency message from Admiral Kreshva reached the Zephyrian capital world in less than 6 hours. High Chancellor Morden was in the middle of a boring meeting about trade regulations when his assistant burst through the doors with the data pad in his trembling hands. You need to see this immediately, the assistant said, his voice barely above a whisper. Morden took the pad and watched the recording of the battle. His purple skin turned pale as he saw 3 of their best cruisers disabled by a single unknown vessel. He watched it twice, then a third time, hoping he had misunderstood what he was seeing. Call an emergency session of the Confederation Council, he ordered. Right now. Within 2 hours, representatives from all 12 member species of the Zephyrian Confederation had gathered in the Great Hall. The room buzzed with nervous energy as the footage played on the main display. The Altarian delegate covered her eyes with her tentacles. The vegan representative made clicking sounds of distress. This cannot be real, declared Admiral Zethka, the military advisor to the council. No single ship could defeat 3 cruisers so easily. The recordings have been verified, Morden replied grimly. Admiral Kreshva's report is accurate. These humans possess technology we do not understand. The council chamber fell silent. For over 3,000 years, the Zephyrian Confederation had been the dominant power in this region of space. They had conquered dozens of worlds and absorbed many smaller civilizations. The idea that some unknown species could humiliate their military was terrifying. What do we know about these humans? Asked Councillor Vixera, an elderly Zephyrian with many years of diplomatic experience. Very little, admitted Intelligence Director Morkin. They claim to be from a world called Earth. They say they are conducting routine scouting missions. Our computers cannot translate their written language, and we have no records of their species in our databases. Routine scouting missions, repeated Admiral Zethka. That means there are more of them out there. The thought sent chills through every member of the council. High Chancellor Morden stood up slowly. We cannot allow this threat to go unanswered. I am authorizing the deployment of Battlefleet Omega. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Battlefleet Omega was their most powerful military force, consisting of 200 warships, including the massive dreadnought Eternal Victory, had not been deployed in over 5 centuries. Sir, Counselor Vixara said carefully, perhaps we should try diplomatic contact first. These humans have not shown aggressive intentions. They violated our space and refused to surrender, Admiral Zethka countered. That is aggression enough. Meanwhile, millions of miles away, the UES Horizon continued its peaceful mission. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his comfortable chair on the bridge, reviewing the data they had collected so far. His crew worked quietly around him, focused on their various tasks. Any interesting findings today, Lisa? He asked his navigator. Lisa Carter looked up from her console with a smile. Actually, yes. The third planet in the Altair system has some unusual mineral formations. Ben picked up some strange energy readings too. Communications officer Ben Tucker nodded. Looks like there might be some kind of civilization down there. The signals are pretty basic, but definitely artificial, worth a closer look.
Captain.
Morrison asked. I think so. Engineer Amy Rodriguez chimed in from her station. My scanners are showing some kind of distress beacon from one of their settlements. Might be a medical emergency. Captain Morrison made his decision quickly.
Yes.
Set course for Altair 3. Let's see if we can help. The UES Horizon changed direction and headed toward the Altarian homeworld. They had no idea that their simple act of kindness was being watched by dozens of Zephyrian surveillance drones. The ship arrived at Altair 3 to find a small colony struggling with some kind of plague. The Altarians were a peaceful species that looked like giant squids with kind eyes. Their settlement was primitive but clean, simple buildings arranged around a central square. Captain Morrison opened communications with the colony leader. This is Captain Morrison of the Earth vessel Horizon. We picked up your distress signal. Do you need medical assistance? The Altarian leader, whose name was difficult for humans to pronounce, was surprised to hear from aliens. But desperation made him willing to trust anyone who might help. Yes, please, he said through their translation system. Many of our people are sick. Our medicine is not working. We do not know what to do. Amy Rodriguez ran her medical scanners. Over the colony from orbit, it's a bacterial infection, she reported. Pretty nasty, but treatable. I can synthesize a cure with our medical fabricator. Within an hour, the humans had produced enough medicine to treat the entire colony. They transported it down to the surface, along with detailed instructions for use. They asked for nothing in return except permission to continue their scientific surveys of the local area. The grateful Altarians shared what information they could about local space lanes and the customs of nearby civilizations. They mentioned the Zephyrian Confederation and warned the humans to be careful. They are not evil, the colony leader explained, but they are very proud. Do not like it when other species refuse their demands. Captain Morrison thanked them for the warning, but did not seem particularly worried. We've dealt with territorial species before. Usually they calm down once they realize we're not a threat. Similar scenes played out across the region as the U.S. Horizon continued its mission. They helped repair a damaged vegan mining station, sharing advanced materials and engineering techniques. They rescued a group of stranded traders whose ship had broken down in an asteroid field. They even stopped to help a Zephyrian science vessel that had suffered a computer malfunction. Each act of kindness was reported back to Zephyrian intelligence. The reports painted a confusing picture. These humans seemed genuinely peaceful, almost naive in their willingness to help strangers. But their technology was clearly far beyond anything the Confederation possessed. Intelligence Director Morkan studied the growing pile of reports on his desk. The humans had fixed problems in minutes that would have taken Zephyrian engineers days to solve. Their ship seemed to run on some impossible energy source that produced no waste heat. Their computers could translate any language after hearing just a few sentences. Most disturbing of all, they seemed completely unafraid of the Zephyrian military. "Sir," his assistant reported, "Battlefleet Omega is now in position. Admiral Kreshva is requesting permission to engage the human vessel." Morkan looked out his window at the stars. Somewhere out there, 200 of their finest warships were preparing to face a single small ship. Should have felt confident. Instead, he felt a growing sense of dread. "Tell the Admiral to proceed," he said quietly. "And may the ancestors help us all." Light years away. Captain Morrison was reviewing the day's survey data when Ben Tucker looked up from his communications console. "Captain, I'm picking up a large fleet moving in our direction. This looks like the same species that tried to stop us before." Captain Morrison sighed. "How large?" "About 200 ships, sir. Big ones." "Well," Captain Morrison said with a slight smile, "I guess they really want to talk to us." "Amy, run a level 3 diagnostic on all systems. Lisa, plot an escape route, just in case." "Ben, see if you can open communications with their fleet commander." The crew went about their tasks with calm efficiency. They had dealt with aggressive aliens before, and it usually worked out fine once everyone stopped shooting. Long enough to have a reasonable conversation, none of them realized they were about to make galactic history. Commander Vextar felt his 4 eyes burn as he stared at the display screen for the 10th time that day. The bright lights of the Zephyrian Deep Space Station made everything look harsh and cold. He had been watching the outer edges of their space for 3 years now, and nothing interesting ever happened. The same mining ships, the same trade routes, the same boring reports to send back to his bosses. But today was different. Small appeared on his screen that should not be there. The computer said it was a ship, but not one from any species they knew. Vextar called his assistant over to look at the readings. "Sir, this vessel is moving through Sector 7, the young officer said, his voice shaking slightly. "It appears to be scanning our mining operations on Kepler 44 to be Vextar. Studied the data more carefully." The ship was small, maybe the size of a cargo transport, but it was moving in ways that seemed wrong. It would stop near their colonies, point strange sensors at them, then move on to the next world, like it was studying them. "Send word to Admiral Kreshva," Vextar ordered. "Tell her we have an unknown contact conducting surveillance in our territory." The message traveled quickly through Zephyrian space. Admiral Kreshva received it while she was eating her morning meal aboard her flagship. She was a veteran of many battles against pirates and rebels. Her dark green skin showed the scars of combat. Her reputation for quick thinking had earned her command of the Third Fleet. "Unknown contact?" she said, reading the report. "How unknown?" Her communications officer, a thin Zephyrian, with nervous habits, pulled up the sensor data. "The ship design does not match anything in our database, Admiral. The materials seem primitive, but the movement patterns suggest advanced navigation systems." Admiral Kreshva stood up from her chair. In her experience, unknown ships in Zephyrian space meant trouble. Pirates, smugglers, or worse. She had dealt with them all before. "Take the fleet to intercept," she commanded. 3 cruisers should be enough to handle 1 small ship. The Zephyrian vessels moved through space like hunting animals. Their sleek hulls gleamed with weapons and armor that had been tested in dozens of conflicts. Each cruiser carried enough firepower to level a small city, and their crews were trained warriors from the finest military academies in the Confederation. They found the strange ship near a small asteroid field, quietly scanning a mining operation. The vessel looked almost funny compared to the massive Zephyrian warships. Its hull was a simple gray color with no visible weapons. Strange writing covered its side, but the translation computers could not read it. Admiral Kreshva opened a communication channel. "Unknown vessel, you are in violation of Zephyrian space. Identify yourself immediately." The response came back quickly, and it surprised everyone on the bridge. The voice was calm, friendly, and spoke their language with only a slight accent. "There, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the UES Horizon. We're from Earth, conducting a routine scouting mission. Sorry if we worried anyone. We're just looking for potential trade partners in this region." The bridge crew looked at each other. In confusion? Trade partners? The alien seemed to think this was some kind of business meeting. "Captain Morrison," Admiral Kreshva said, her voice becoming stern, "you will surrender your vessel immediately and submit to Zephyrian authority. Any resistance will be met with force. There was a pause before the human captain responded. Admiral, I appreciate the offer, but we really can't do that. We have a mission to complete, and our people are expecting us back with a full report. How about we just finish up here and be on our way? We promise not to take anything or cause any trouble? Admiral Kreshva felt her anger rising. This primitive alien was refusing her direct orders. In all her years of service, no one had ever spoken to her with such casual disrespect. You have 10 seconds to comply, or we will open fire, she announced. Look, Admiral, came the response from Captain Morrison. We really don't want any trouble here. Can't we work something out? Maybe we could share some of our survey data with you. We've found some interesting mineral deposits that might be useful for your people. The human was still trying to negotiate. Admiral Kreshva had seen this before with desperate pirates. They would try anything to avoid capture. Fire, she ordered. The 3 Zephyrian cruisers unleashed their weapons at the same time. Bright blue plasma bolts shot through space toward the small human ship. The weapons had enough power to punch holes through solid rock, and they were aimed with perfect accuracy. But something impossible happened. The human ship simply was not there anymore. It had moved so quickly that the Zevorian sensors could barely track it. The plasma bolts passed harmlessly through empty space. Where did it go? Admiral Kreshva shouted. Behind us, Admiral, her sensor officer reported, his voice filled with disbelief. The UES horizon had somehow appeared behind the Zephyrian formation without anyone seeing how it got there. Before the Admiral could give new orders, strange beams of light shot out from the human ship. The beams did not explode or burn. Instead, they seemed to reach into the Zephyrian vessels and turn things off. The main weapons on the first cruiser simply stopped working. The engines on the second ship shut down completely. The third vessel found all its defensive systems failing at once. What is happening to my ships? Admiral Kreshva demanded. Her engineering officer was staring at his readings with wide eyes. Admiral, they are somehow disrupting our power systems. From the outside, I have never seen technology like this. Captain Morrison's voice came over the communication system again, still sounding apologetic. Sorry about that, Admiral. We really didn't want to fight, but we can't let you interfere with our mission. Our ship's computer systems have temporarily disabled your weapons to prevent anyone from getting hurt. Admiral Kreshva looked around her bridge in shock. 3 of the most advanced warships in the Zephyrian fleet had been disabled by a single small vessel in less than 30 seconds. And the humans had done it without destroying anything or killing anyone. How, was all she could manage to say. Well, Captain Morrison replied, our ships are designed to handle first contact situations peacefully. We've found that most conflicts can be avoided if you just take away everyone's ability to shoot at each other. No harm done, though. Ow. Your systems should come back online in about an hour. The human ship began moving away, continuing its scanning mission as if nothing had happened. Admiral Kreshva sat down heavily in her command chair. In her long military career, she had never felt so helpless. These humans had technology that made her fleet look like children playing with toys, and they were just scouts on a routine mission. Send an emergency message to High Command, she whispered. Tell them we have a problem.